It's crazy to think. Anybody that's like, dude, I mean, this Avs core, they won the Stanley Cup a few years ago, and they've been really close, man. They got bounced in the second round, but they went to Game 7 2 years in a row. Like, they're close. They should just run it back. It would have been smart for them to run it back. Nobody was saying that.
No.
People were like, nah, man, we need to make a change. Like, we need to be able to get over that hump. But it seems like with a lot of the hardcore truthers, I really do feel like a lot of these people on Twitter are like handles of other players. You know what I mean? Like, what are they called? Like the ghost lines, whatever it is.
Burners,
the burner accounts. Because sometimes it's like, it's just, it doesn't make any sense. This guy even on my YouTube comments was like, well, we should, like, I like what we're doing. This is what the Patriots used to do in the days where they were winning all the Super Bowls. They would just keep running it back with the same team. And it's like, dude, no, they didn't. Like, they still signed players. There's a shitload of examples.
Okay.
It didn't always work, right? They got Randy Moss. They didn't end up winning it with him, but like, that's an example. But there's a shitload of guys, man. They signed Mike Vrabel. He was one of the big guys. They signed Rodney Harrison, Danny Woodhead, right? As somebody that was a huge role player for them. Their entire offensive line was free agent guys. And it's obviously the course of a decade, but they didn't, like, teams don't do that ever. You don't ever see it where they just don't do anything. And I do think that we're going to make a couple moves, but how significant are they going to be?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, to do nothing this free agency cycle, like, that would be absolute comedy. Like, there's no way they could go to the podium after doing their post-draft free agency post-free agency conference or whatever. And all these reporters are just like, hey, so what happened? And they didn't add any external players. Like, there's no way that's going to happen.
Yeah. I mean, imagine, like, you wouldn't even have a press conference for anybody.
Yeah, exactly.
Because, like, we know everyone already. Like, you're gonna have,
I know. I was like, I wanted to take today off to make videos about, like, everything you need to know about, for example, Travis Etienne, everything you need to know about, whoever. But I didn't even get the chance to do that because we know everything that we need to know about Adam Troutman because we have a 3-year sample size of watching him here in this building. Okay. Mm-hmm. Derek, one of my fellow Arizona fans, you're going to get JK, a second-round running back, and Harvey for half that Etienne was paid. Okay, so he's saying that our backfield is going to be JK, a second-rounder this upcoming year, and Harvey for half of Etienne's cap hit. Now, the thing is, it's not about money in this situation. It's about resource allocation, okay? That second-rounder, what if you could use it on, like, linebacker? What if you could use it on D-line? What if you could use it on O-line? It's not about the money, With Singleton, it's not about the money. It's what it prevents you from doing. With Troutman, it's not about the money. It prevents you. It's like, okay, Troutman, we're not going to deactivate him on a $5 million a year contract. So what does it prevent us from doing?
Yeah. Like, you could draft Jacob Rodriguez, and in a normal world, I'd have been really thrilled. But now I'm going to be like, cool, he's going to be in game day inactive until somebody gets hurt. It's just going to happen. Because you're not going to bench Singleton or Sternad. You're just not. So you're absolutely correct. It's about what it prevents you from doing. Like, yeah, you're right. It is going to be cheaper than what we paid for Etienne. But, man, we could add Etienne and Harvey and then been able to add at other places with that second-round pick. We could have had a lot of flexibility. We could have traded out of it. We could have used it to trade up. There's a lot of different things in this hypothetical situation, which I think is very realistic that it could. But that's my point. And so it's like, is it better then? Or would it have been worth the extra few $1 million this one season on the cap?
Yeah, exactly. In the NFL, it's a game of opportunity cost, man. Everybody, wants to go off about how the Broncos re-signed Alex Singleton and they re-signed Adam Troutman, but I feel like a lot of people don't really understand why those are detrimental and harmful moves to the team. Because honestly, I think it just rewards complacency and mediocrity. And not only that, but it just prevents you from going out there and being like, okay, Charlie Kolar, he'd be a heck of an ad, but we don't need 2 blocking tight ends. We don't need to have 3 blocking tight ends on this team since we already re-signed Adkins. We don't need to do that. So what it does is it leads to this whole snowball effect of, okay, Charlie Kolar's now off our board. And it shouldn't work like that because Charlie Kolar is actually a really, really good player that would have helped us a lot. I think he would have helped this offense function a lot better than any of these other tight ends did this past year. How can you have blocking tight ends, but they all suck at blocking? That's just what I'm wondering.
No, I know, man. And I think we said it might have been last week on Horsepower Hour, or maybe on yesterday's stream. I don't know when it was, but like that's the thing too, is like, okay, you sign Charlie Kolar, right? You get yourself a really good blocking tight end. Now, and then bringing Nate Atkins back, I'm fine with that too. So if you got Nate Atkins, because I've actually seen situations where he could block really well. So you're assuming he's healthy, he's going to continue to get better at blocking. Charlie Kolar, is one of the premier blocking guys. Now, all of a sudden, Evan Ingram happens to start playing better football because his responsibility could change. He could focus on actually catching the ball. And then also in the draft, a guy like Eli Stowers would actually make sense potentially. Michael Trigg, they might make sense because they're not really good blockers, but you don't need them to block right now because we have guys that can do that. Or their blocking responsibilities are going to be greatly reduced to where it's fine. So again, every move eventually has some sort of a consequence or reward or whatever it is. So you're absolutely right. I mean, that's the thing that really bothers me. It's not so much Alex Singleton, the player, as it is the repercussions of it.
Yeah, no. And was Singleton the worst linebacker in the NFL this past season? No, he wasn't. I think he was, below average to average. And
Yeah.
honestly, that's a hell of a lot more than I was expecting him to be. You
Yeah.
know what?
No shit.
My expectations for him coming into the season were rock bottom. And you know what? He outperformed them. That being said, in 2023, he was literally one of the worst linebackers in the NFL. So that's where my expectations were coming off the ACL tear. You know what? He had a heck of a year. He had an inspiring year. But the reality of this situation is the NFL is a game of opportunity cost. All right. And I did have Derek once again said the Broncos are also preparing for Bo's contract. And Darian brings up a good point. Darian Bustamante says that, all right, we got 2026, 2027, 2028, fifth year option. 2029 is when that really kicks in. So we still had a short term window to really push all our chips in if we really wanted to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, that's assuming that they make a deal like that. Like, even though it'll be an extension, they might, put a little bit of money more up front. But, dude, I can assure you that, and I don't know, this whole like offseason, the way that today started, I don't know why I feel like free agency's been like a week long now. But this whole, like today, the way it started, it makes me maybe not think like that. But I mean, NFL GMs are always looking towards the future. I mean, there's no doubt about it, but there's no way George Payton's like, oh man, we can't because the guys that we were looking at signing, like the high end splash guys, you talk about ETN, even Devin Lloyd's contract, right? Those are like the two big ones of the guys that we were kind of warning on the target list. They really would have no impact as to what we end up doing with Bo next year. I mean, none. Our cap situation is going to be completely different next season. There's guys that we can offload and save a whole bunch of money with. Like it has no ties to that. The real thing that you look at in the future of the team is always the draft. The draft is the most detrimental towards building out that pipeline more than anything.
Yeah, of course. And, a lot of people are talking about, what do you think we're freeing all this cap space for? You know what we freed up all this cap space to do? We restructured Quinn Miners so that we could re-sign Alex Singleton and Adam Troutman. That's what we did. That's literally what we did with the restructured buddy. And you know what? We still have money to go out there and do something. But even then, Leo Chanel, I would love for Leo Chanel to be a Bronco. I really wanted him to be a Bronco. But now I'm just like, all right, if you have 3 second contracts, or in Singleton's case, a third contract on this team at the linebacker position, then that deters you from that. And that's why this is a game of opportunity cost. That's why we're disappointed with everything that we did right now. And funny thing is that a guy like CJ Allen doesn't need to be mentored by Singleton for a year. And now you're at the point where you're just like, all right, CJ Allen or Jacob Rodriguez at number 30, they're a heck of a player. But, we now have a glaring need at another position. So you don't even need to do that with, using your first round pick. Everybody absolutely rioted that Barron didn't play much this past year. Could you imagine if, our first round pick was a linebacker, off-ball linebacker, and they were getting like 2 snaps a game because the coaching staff just wanted to run it back with Singleton?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, dude, I just can't really make like a rational thinking. Like I can't wait to hear what Sean and George Payton have to say about it, but I'm also dreading what they're going to have to say about it. You know what I mean? Just completely dreading.
Me too. because I know that when they go to the podium, a lot of the times it's kind of a bunch of nonsense. I mean, with George at least. With Sean, he actually gives you some dirt. He'll give you some
Oh
dirt
yeah,
every now and then.
yeah, he
But yeah,
will.
no. But no, I feel like, you know, what's gonna be the I don't know what the press conference is, because,
Yeah,
I
I
know
don't
what
know.
George Payton's gonna say, though we like what we have. We like
Yeah,
our room. We trust our coaches to develop his skill set. But I'm curious to hear what Sean says because I feel like that's gonna give us a real cue. And one thing I wanted to say on horsepower hour that I didn't get the chance to say, I'm curious to see the dynamics of the room because,
100%.
this feels like way, way different from what we had last year. Okay.
Yeah.
It feels way different in the offseason. Guys, day one last year, we signed Hufanga and Greenlaw. 2 days later, we signed Ingram. June, we signed Dobbins. So that was our free agency haul last year. Okay. Our free agency haul on day one this year took like a backwards approach. All right. Last year, that would be the equivalent of re signing Cody Barton and Javonte Williams because they were great culture guys. That's what this would have been like
Mhm.
had you done it, had you, just flipped the rules from 2025 to 2026.
Yep. Yeah, no, I do. I'm 100% with you in terms of I felt like there was some sort of I don't know if it's a power struggle or some sort of miscommunication in the room there as well. And I'm going to be we're going to see. I mean, they were talking about George Payton was going to get his extension, and Sean Payton was like, "Man, he absolutely should." There's obviously I've been clamoring for that to happen since I got here, and they made it seem like it was pretty obvious. But just keep an eye out if something weird happens, and all of a sudden that gets dragged out a little bit, or something's weird because it felt like the dynamics were off. Everything about this was weird. Um, everything about it. It was very strange because again, if we only made the signs that we made yesterday before it started and we didn't sign anybody at all today, you would feel better about it because you're like, all right, they're still working through the process. But it seems like they literally just gave up. They didn't get their 2 targets. Okay. Resort back to the guys that we had to move forward. That's what it
Yeah.
feels like. And it's
Yeah.
weird.
No. And it's weird, man. It just feels like, Todd says we can only hope there is some kind of plan. I mean, the first day of the legal tampering period has come and gone. And by and large, this is largely what the free agency class is going to look like. Now, there are some guys that are linked to Denver that are still out there. Like Chanel, I know, was one that was linked to Denver a little bit more before free agency started. But with the, like I said, with the linebacker news, I don't think that's going to happen. What else? There were a couple guys linked to Denver that I feel like are just now off the table because yeah, it's just real. It's just, I don't know. It's just not pragmatic. And, a lot of people said that last year we had holes when we took Johnny Barron, when I was, literally thinking about, what would happen if we used our first round pick on a linebacker. But the problem is how do I put this? I feel like this coaching staff and this front office, I feel like there's a miscommunication there on, resources and resource allocation and how much this guy actually gets on the field. Like, for example, Evan Ingram, man, they made a big deal about going out and getting him. And then suddenly what? He plays 40% of the offensive snaps with only one game missed due to injury.
Mm-hmm. It's weird. It's
Very
it's
strange.
it's it's really weird. It's almost like there's a blatant, hey, if we can't get a very specific type of guy that we want, then we're good just not getting anybody at all and figuring it out. You know what I mean? Like at certain positions, obviously. I don't want to take away from all the really good things that George and Sean Payton have done because there's a lot. There's a lot more
Yeah.
good than there is bad.
Yeah.
But when you start to notice trends, you're like, okay, this is just how they operate. And it's just what they do. Like it's crazy. Like there's that they don't care about certain linebacker, like certain rooms or just being okay there.
Yeah.
And it's weird. It's really, really weird. But I don't know. I mean, there's this Jeffrey Essery on Twitter. This is kind of fascinating. He had said, I'll just copy and paste it into here. Go follow it. It's not my tweet, but it's easier. And it makes a lot of sense because it says one observation, the top one. It puts it in two. I don't know. One observation: Denver is returning 95% of their entire offensive snaps from last year's roster, and 92% of the defensive snaps. I don't have a good way to pull historical, but that is or has to be near the top of roster turnover and free agency era, near unheard of continuity, right? And I don't think this is necessarily a spin because Oh, he is a staff writer for Mile High Report. But like, it is interesting because you're like, that doesn't usually happen. So that's pretty cool. But where my mind goes right when I see this is when you have teams that have a lot of success, there usually is a lot of turnover on their roster because other teams really want their players. The problem, the weird thing about the Broncos is we don't have that issue, dude. Like, no, and it's, I'm not even trying to joke about it. Like, maybe we just have a certain flavor of player that works for us that other teams don't care for, or there could be a multitude of things, but like, this could be a really good stat that he pulled, or it could be like, is that a good thing though? Because I remember, man, after the Super Bowl 50 win, our free agents, I mean, people were clamoring to get after our guys, right? And you knew we had a really good coaching staff because every single year, I'm talking about recently, every single year, other teams are poaching our coaching staff. That just tells you in and of itself, oh, other teams want to, we have a good coaching staff. Nobody really wants your players. Nobody really wants to trade for your players. I don't know, dude. I mean, that doesn't seem really like a good thing to me.
Yeah, no,
it could
you
be.
make a good point. You make a good point because you think about guys like who did we lose in last year? Who did we lose last year? Declan Doyle. Okay, now the offensive coordinator of the Baltimore Ravens, and he's 29 years old.
Mhm.
He's 4 years older than me. That's it.
It's
And
crazy.
then you think
5
about the
years
other
younger
guys.
than me.
Yeah, exactly.
Crazy.
I thought you were I thought you were like 27.
No, I'm
Wow.
34. I know, man. I
That's
know.
okay.
Young soul.
You look pretty good for your age.
I've
But
always
either
been the
way,
youngest. So yeah. Anyways, go ahead.
that's funny. But no, you lose Declan Doyle. I think there were, you lose Jim Leonard this upcoming year or this previous year, this previous coaching cycle as well. So yeah, your coaches were hot commodities. Davis Webb, man, getting head coaching interviews, and he had never even been an offensive coordinator before.
Mhm.
But you hear all these guys like Adam Troutman come on here and be like, there were 4 or 5 teams that were really hot for me. Like, no, dude, they offered you the vet minimum and your agent used it as leverage. And you were right, man. The thing I respect about Singleton, I bet there were actual teams in on Alex Singleton. Okay. I bet there were actual teams that were just like, all right, cool. He could stabilize us. He could right the ship for a little bit. Nobody else wanted Adam Troutman. Adam Troutman is unplayable on what, 26, 27 other NFL teams?
He is, dude. He is. Dude, he's never played for another team that wasn't coached by Sean Payton.
Oh my God.
I mean, ever. So yeah, Logan Hall, that is a good name. I mentioned him as one of the 5 guys that I can see the Broncos going after, kind of looking at it through the lens of George and Sean Payton. God, was I wrong in that video. But Logan Hall was my 5th guy. And so he could be. He would be like a rotational type of defensive end. A lot of talent. 2nd round pick out of Houston. A lot of very, very talented kid. Hasn't really worked out in Tampa. So yeah, maybe. Who knows? But at this point, it's like, all right, I've come to the terms now, I think, finally, that we're not going to really make a splash move. So I'm just like, well, what are we going to do? Maybe you'll surprise me,
Oh my goodness. Logan Wilson is the most washed player in the league. Let's get 2 Logans, Logan Wilson, Logan Hall. Yeah, man. If you're not good enough for the Cowboys defense at the linebacker position, you're probably not good for a team with actual standards on the defensive side of the wall. Of course, I say that, and all we did was re-sign Alex Singleton.
Dude, maybe the Cowboys were the team that were in on Alex Singleton.
Yeah. You know what? Honestly, I said yesterday during our stream that would have been a good spot. I unironically think that would have been a really good spot for Alex Singleton. Just one of these dumpster fire of a defenses like Bengals or Cowboys.
Yeah.
I feel like getting a leader who plays fiery, I feel like that made sense.
Yes.
What I don't feel like made sense is, you don't get impact plays from him on the Denver Broncos defense. And for as good as our defense has been over the past year, honestly, we got better play at inside linebacker the year before with Cody Barton and Justin Strnad. And that was before Strnad was good too. So that's just something to note as well.
Yeah.
Like, man, I've never wanted Cody Barton back so bad because at least they let him walk. At least they let him, get his 3 for whatever it was from Tennessee. All right.
Mhm.
But yeah, no, at least they let Alex Singleton hit the upper market, but I just don't know, man.
Dude, it's so crazy, man, to think that like he really does fit perfectly on a really bad defense because he stands out as really good on a bad defense because he's playing his ass off. You can respect it. Like, I remember the days where the Broncos sucked. It wasn't very long ago. And I would always at least appreciate the hell out of the guys that showed like they cared. Like what pissed me off is we lose like our 8th game in a row, and all the guys are like shaking hands and they're laughing with players after the game. And you'd have those like players that really weren't good players, but they were just pissed because they lost. And I was like, hell yeah. And yeah, a bad, like vulnerable, like linebackers that are liabilities don't really stick out like a sore thumb on bad to average defenses as they do on really, really good defenses like us. So, I mean, he would have been good on a really shitty defense.
Yeah, he would have been great on a really shitty
like
defense.
The Jets would have loved him. He would have actually like given a little bit of a give a shit to a defense that looked like they were dead the entire season last year.
Yeah, of course. Like for one of these, yeah, I mean, he said Alex Singleton smiles after losing. Like, yeah, the Jaguars comment, I thought that was insane. I thought that was a terrible standard from the uh to set by your captain. But, at least I can appreciate that he does, for all the faults that we do have with re-signing him, at least he does, play his ass off. If there is any silver lining, you're keeping the band together. And you know what? Is that a bad thing? Not necessarily, but this isn't the MLB where resource allocation doesn't matter. So that's the problem. Okay. This is the NFL. Opportunity cost is a huge deal. Sternad and Singleton will not win us a Super Bowl. Inside linebackers, if you want to win a Super Bowl, and the Broncos are not making good business decisions at the Super Bowl. 100%, dude. Like, were the Broncos going to win a Super Bowl with their inside linebacker room this past year? They could have, but once again, you'd be foolish to run it back with your biggest liabilities. What do you think about this?
Well, you know why they could have? They could have because they would have had the same room they have now, plus Dre Greenlaw.
Yes.
And maybe you're like, cool, we could still see a Dre Greenlaw next level. Like that's it, dude. Them signing Singleton and then immediately releasing Alex Singleton was like, or releasing Dre Greenlaw was like the most add fuel to the burning fire that was driving me nuts. Because even if you had all three of those guys back, you could still easily make the argument, okay, yes, this room got better because you're going to bank on a healthier Dre Greenlaw. And, maybe Alex Singleton continues to have a decent season 1 year removed from the ACL. For this year, you could have easily argued maybe we got better at inside linebacker. But when you it was mainly because you're optimistic about Dre Greenlaw having a healthy season. But now he's gone and you're like, oh, I know exactly what the ceiling for this linebacker room is. And it's not very high.
No, it is not. And you know what? Your only hope at improving an inside linebacker is Sternad becomes like the superhuman. Okay, that's the only way I could see like realistic improvement because Alex Singleton is 32, going to be 33, has already had an ACL tear that is not that far removed, only a year and a half since he has been removed from that ACL tear against Tampa in week 3. And then what else? You think about just all the other guys like Corette Reed, like Drew Sanders. Oh God, I don't want to hear anything about Drew Sanders this upcoming training camp. Please, please no. You know what? But there is part of me that thinks there is something there. I think it's because I want to believe that there is something there so bad.
I think just because we had such a bad start to free agency, we're just holding on to anything at this point too. But yeah, if we won the Super Bowl and keeping continuity.
Oh yeah.
Would make sense, but we did. No, dude, exactly right. I think even if you win the Super Bowl, you still got to always look and say, okay, where can we get better? That's a natural thing. But if you don't win the Super Bowl, you need to treat your offseason roster construction in the same manner as if you won 6 games, realistically, because it doesn't mean that you need to make as many moves as like the Titans made today, but you've got to look at everything and say, where can we improve? And what can we do to improve it and go out and try to improve it? You can never just be like, well, we won 14 games and it worked out and we got most guys re-signed. So why not just try that again? Like it's a crazy thought. Like no teams do that. No one. Nobody does it. Everybody at least makes something, which like I said, I think we're gonna, but I don't know. It's weird because I have no idea where this team's even gonna go from here.
I have no idea either, especially when George and Sean were talking about how aggressive they were going to be. And you know what? Jeremy brought it up. Like, did they not try? I mean, no, but were they lackadaisical? Were they lazy? Absolutely. Because you know what? They laughed at the idea of giving Travis Etienne $13 million a year. Mike Kless came on here. It was just like, nah, way too expensive. Okay. But J.K. Dobbins, who's never played a full season in his career, 1 for 8. Fully guaranteed, but 2 for 20 in total value. Man, yeah, we can do that. That's not egregious, is it?
No, for sure, dude. And that's what I'm saying. That's why it's lazy. Because if they came out and they said the Broncos kicked the tires on Travis Etienne, and it was a little bit too expensive for them. So then they pivoted and they went over. They never really were interested in Algier because they felt like Algier wasn't a fit. And then they looked at other guys like Rico Dowdle, and they realized that those contracts are going to be a little bit more, but because of what J.K. Dobbins brought and what they feel like they can get in the draft, they feel like they ended up going with J.K. Dobbins. Like that story makes more sense because that shows, hey, we went through this entire process and we ultimately ended up going with J.K. Dobbins. It would still be the same result, and I would feel the same way about it, but it would at least show like that's the normal report of a team that is trying. Free agency hasn't even technically started yet. And you're just saying we had one guy we were targeting, and if that didn't work out, we were just going to sign the guy that we could have signed basically in a month if we wanted to. It does seem like it was very minimal effort. And the same thing with tight ends too.
Aussie always makes me fucking die, man. Are we worried? Are we worried as Sean is aging, he's becoming more worried about shit? Like he's worried about going to the store, getting mugged by some hooligans. And that's
totally, dude.
You know what? He actually did admit, that he thinks about the risk more than the reward as he gets up there in age. Now, what changed from 365 days ago when you signed Greenlaw Hufanga to now? I don't know. I genuinely don't know. If the difference is that you went to the AFC Championship last year and you went, and last year you got, or this past year I should say, and last year you got bounced in the wild card round of the first game, then that's crazy. Oh wow, only 7 viewers now. Well, across everywhere this is streamed, we have 128. So I hope you're happy, Jerry. But yeah, no, either way, he almost did this with Lil Jordan Humphrey being his wide receiver 3, LMAO. See, this is the thing. People forget we're not that far removed from Lil Jordan Humphrey getting that snap share in the AFC Championship. And you know what? I bring up Lil Jordan Humphrey. Guys, I know the Broncos had their hands tied. I know they didn't have a whole lot of solutions. But you know what I would have done? I would have made it so Lil Jordan Humphrey, who was a significant part, who was cut from the 4-13 New York Giants with wide receiver injuries everywhere to Neighbors and Slayton and whoever, I would have made it so we didn't need to re-sign him to make our offense work. I would have made it so where he was not an integral part of our depth, to where he's not playing 74% of the snaps in the AFC Championship.
Yeah. And here's another thing that I feel like we need to be real with ourselves. Last year was extremely exciting. I loved it. It ended in heartbreak. That same shock that I felt after hearing the Bo news, I kind of felt a little bit like it carried over to today. But let's not kid ourselves, all right? This is a team that significantly overachieved, that won a lot of games that they should not have won, that were in one-score games with a lot of teams that they had no business being in one-score games with, right? We got very lucky. We got very lucky by not having a lot of injuries again during the season. Obviously, it killed us in the postseason. We played a lot of opponents that didn't have their starting quarterback at the time. We ended the season with a third-string quarterback in Kansas City, and then we got lucky that the Chargers ended up deciding that they didn't want to play any of their starters, and we still barely won both of those games. We played Cincinnati early in the year at home, and Joe Burrow had gotten hurt a couple of weeks, prior to that, or else that could have been different. Like, this was a really good team, but it was still not a phenomenal, this like unbelievable, all worldly team. Like, a lot of things had to happen and go right in our favor for us to get to the point that we did. And it's cool that we got there. And yes, all the things are true about if Bo doesn't get hurt, we probably make the Super Bowl. We were 30 minutes away from making it. But that didn't happen. And so you got to look at it with everything. Like, yeah, we had a historic comeback against the Giants. The Giants suck. Why the hell were we down 28, 29 points to them? You know what I mean? Like, it shows a lot of grit and a lot of good things, but there's also obviously a lot of flaws there. And so we can't just live in this fairy tale land where we're like, oh man, we're in the AFC Championship, we're gonna. And then to add to the point, teams are going to get better in the AFC like they do every year. It's just naturally what's going to happen. You're going to play a first place schedule this year. You're going to have much more difficult opponents. So could what happened last year happen again this upcoming season? Yes, but it is extremely unlikely. No. And you've got to set yourself up better to be in a better position to win those games moving forward. Yeah, I mean, it just is what it is.
You're completely right. And this comment, I highlighted it because it just brings you a good point. The schedule next year is going to be harder. Okay, you get the NFC West. I know that, people say in May when the schedule comes out, well, you can't really circle wins and losses or whatever. I don't need to circle wins and losses and know that the NFC West with 3 teams, the 49ers, the Rams, and the Seahawks, who are always going to be competitive, is going to be difficult for us. Okay. I don't need to, see what the slate looks like during the week we play the Patriots or the Bills to know that those are going to be tough games, and to know that you're on the road in Pittsburgh, and to know that you have a first place schedule this upcoming year, which includes the Jaguars, which includes, I know Pittsburgh was a bit of an anomaly, but still, and yeah, we were in rock fights. And honestly, I don't feel like this team played that much better than the 2024 team. I really don't. I think they were better, but I feel like this past year you hit less explosive plays, you generated less turnovers. While I do think you were a better down-to-down team, and I thought you were more consistent on certain areas of your team, I thought special teams was a marginal step, or a huge step back from the 2024 team. What I'm trying to say is I feel like this team was not that much better than that 2024 team.
No, the only difference is that they were a very clutch team this year. And they were very not clutch in 2024, which I know is important. But in 24, when we played bad opponents, we would murder them.
We beat the fucking piss out of them.
We wouldn't do that this year.
No, we let all of them hang around. The Jets, there was no reason for them to be at midfield with like a 4th and 5 that could have put them in field goal range had they picked up.
Yeah. No, it's crazy. Highlight the Monarchist at 1025. He puts on. I appreciate it. He's so funny. He said Mark called me out. I didn't mean to call you out. I hope you didn't take it like that. It was just funny because it was so out there, and I didn't know if you were being serious. So you had said, what would be fair compensation for Garrett Wilson? Do I rate him too high, or Sutton and Franklin too low, or is it the late 1st and 3rd that you're worried about? That's a loaded question. I would say I think Garrett Wilson is really good, but I would say a 1st-round pick for Garrett Wilson would be fair. A 1st-round pick and Sutton for Garrett Wilson, maybe. I mean, I still probably wouldn't do that. That's still a lot. I think for me, it's one of those where you're like, okay, you're putting so much on Garrett Wilson being an absolute behemoth of a receiver for you, because you're getting rid of Sutton, which I think that there's a clear upgrade between Sutton and Wilson, but then also Franklin, which I think he's still very much an ascending player. People don't talk about just the huge step he took from year 1 to year 2. And imagine if he does that from he doubled up on he doubled his receptions, or tripled his receptions, tripled his touchdowns, and tripled his yards. So, you're taking away that possibility. He's only 21 years old still, or 22 maybe.
Wow.
And in addition, a 1st and a 3rd, that's way too extra, because you're going to use one of those 1st-round picks, that you would have used one of those 1st-round picks to get a receiver. So now the 2nd-round pick that you have, you'd use that to get a receiver, and then you're still not filling other needs. So to answer your question, it's probably the 1st-rounder and Sutton. That's the 1st-rounder and Franklin. That's too much for me in that one. I just wanted to answer that, but I appreciate you asking it.
Yeah, no, Monarchist is also a great follower, so I love seeing you in here as much as I can. I hate the whole we didn't overpay. Like, you just overpaid Troutman and Dobbins. Just because they weren't external, that doesn't mean we didn't overpay. You're correct. You didn't even let Troutman hit the market. You set the market for him, which I think is just ridiculous. Okay, there's nobody else that was going to give Adam Troutman a 3 for, what was it? 3 for 17, right? Sorry, Tito's hitting me a little hard right now.
Oh,
but
Tito's, bro. That shit reminds me of college. I think it was 3 years. 3 years, 17 million.
Okay,
or 18 and a half.
This reminds me of when Chris Bryant signed with the Rockies. And disclaimer, I don't follow the Rockies. They have not earned our trust as a fan base or our attention span like the Nuggets, Avs, and Broncos have. That being said, this reminds me of when Chris Bryant was just like, I wish I had done a little more research before I signed with the Rockies. You know what? Fuck you. You know why? Because nobody else was going to pay you that ridiculous contract that the Rockies did. It was 7 for $210 million, where he had injury concerns and had been a declining player for years. So when Adam Troutman comes out here and you set the market for him, you're not reacting to anything. At least with Singleton, I do respect the fact that they let him hit the open market, because had he gotten an egregious offer at 10 a.m. Mountain Time from another team, he would be on another team. That's just the way I see it. But the fact that you set the market at one of your weakest positions on the offensive side of the ball, that's just the bigger problem.
Yeah. No, I agree. I agree. And dude, I didn't know Chris Bryant said that about the Rockies. The real answer to that is the Rockies should have done more research on your ass, bro. Like, are you out of your mind? You're like robbing this franchise, 200 million bucks or whatever. You don't even play. Yeah. Anyways, it's asinine to think. But again, man, like, yeah, it doesn't seem to make sense. Like, as if they knew what the blocking tight end market was going to look like. They were so confident in what it was going to look like, and they just went a slightly bit lower with the with Troutman. Is crazy to think. Like, I bet you they didn't even know that a blocking tight end, Johnny Munt, was going to be released today. And maybe that could have changed a lot of things. Maybe you would have felt like, oh my God, he's actually better. But now you're like, well, we can't sign him, even though we think he's a better blocking tight end, because we already spent our blocking tight end salary budget on Troutman. It just, a lot of it doesn't make sense, man. Like, again, I don't think that you were really going to be very much at risk of losing Adam Troutman had you waited 12 hours to sign him.
No,
You know,
trust, like, plus also there's like a human element in this. All right. If somebody, if you get equivalent offers from the Broncos and another team, your stuff's already here, your house, whatever, is probably already here.
Yeah,
You know this team, you know this city. You don't want to have to like go through moving and all that. So like, why
of
would you
course.
want to relocate? Why would
Yeah.
you want to relocate if you were just given the same offer, uh, by a similar team? I don't know. But either way, you talked about, we talked about Bellinger and Charlie Kohler. They both got 3 for 24, like 3 for 24 contracts. We're waiting to see the guarantees on that. But I'm going to be so for real. I would rather have those guys. I'd rather have Charlie Kohler at, what's double 3 for 24? 3 for 48. I would rather have that because I feel like that his role would be at least kind of worth the chance for the Broncos to see what they have. Now, would the production be worth it in the receiving game? No, absolutely not. You don't pay 48 million for over 3 years for, 150 yards a year. But based on what they could have provided, like I wasn't in on Wandale. I wasn't in on Wandale because I feel like the production wasn't worth it. But, if you sign him for 16, 17 a year or whatever he ended up getting, I think he was actually like 4 for 78 from Tennessee. Had you re-signed him to be that third down specialist and you don't have to deal with those issues on third down anymore, maybe that could have been worth it. Who knows?
Dude, I'm telling you, never in the history of any sport, especially the Broncos, have I ever followed where I'm like, God, that guy's really good at his designated job, but man, we paid him too much.
Yeah.
Like, if we signed Charlie Kolar to an egregious contract, you're like, whoa, that's a lot. But he was really good at blocking tight, like as a blocking tight end. He was just really good at that. Then you'd be like, and the team was having success, you'd be like, hey man, he's worth it. Or you probably wouldn't even talk about it because he does his job really well. And so, yeah, I mean, obviously that's a really like extreme comp because in no world was he going to get 48 million. But I get exactly what you're trying to say is like, spend more if you know that you're going to actually get someone that's good at that job. And my thing is another thing, and it's funny because he is very insecure. We talked about that at nauseam. It was absolutely crazy. But another thing about it was, I feel like when they came out and said, yeah, there was 4 or 5 teams that were interested in me, but we really decided to stay here. Like, if that was really the case and you felt like it was going to be a bidding war, then the first thing that I would have done is fire my agent, because the agent's job is to say, dude, we have a lot of people looking for your services. You're going to the market and we're going to drive this price up. And if Denver wants to match, great, you can stay here. If not, you take more money elsewhere. And that would have been exactly what he would have wanted to do for his client. It's not like Adam Troutman's made a whole shitload of money compared to a lot of these other players. This was really his first big contract in NFL terms. So it's like, who are you kidding? Either you have a terrible agent or you're just trying to bullshit us. And I don't think your agent's terrible because he represents a lot of players. I looked him up, very well respected agent. So you're just insulting my intelligence. And that's where I get really, really irritated.
Yeah. All right. What do you think the Broncos are going to do in free agency day 2? Honestly, I'm out of ideas. Like, just being so for real, I'm out of ideas on what they can realistically do. And that is the hidden cost of going in on a guy like Nate Atkins, or not even him, but like that's the hidden cost of going in on I'm trying to think. Who am I trying to think of? Adam Troutman. That's the hidden cost of going in on a guy like Alex Singleton is, all these guys where you would have been like, all right, that's a good budget signing. No, now it's no longer a fit. Like DeMarco Jackson from the Chicago Bears. That's another one I brought up. I don't think he's been signed by a team
He
yet.
did. He signed back with the Bears
Oh,
1
shit.
year, $7.5 million on a 1-year deal. Pretty solid
Hey,
for him.
good for him. But either way, the
Yeah.
point stands. Like, these budget guys, like, I'm out of ideas because they're gonna look at what you just did. A linebacker, if a linebacker who is, like, projected to make 3 to 4 million a year on the open market sees that you signed Strnad and Singleton to new deals, they're just like, "Why the hell would I go there? Am I gonna get any playing time?" They're gonna look at
Yep.
the snap share and be like, "What?"
Yeah, I think realistically, you're gonna look at somebody that, that maybe is a really, really good special teams contributor that can be like a depth safety, like a backup safety, somebody that I think, could make a lot of sense. Um, I'm trying to look at the guys that are available. Like, yeah, I don't really know. Or maybe, I mean, hell, do you maybe if you can get them for really cheap, which I doubt that you can, but like, does someone like a Darren Waller make sense, right? Because now that you've
Uh,
shored up your blocking tight end role, maybe you want to add to the top end and let Darren Waller and Evan Ingram maybe compete, because I don't think Evan Ingram has a a, a guarantee like option part in his salary like Greenlaw did. Because Greenlaw, if he was on this roster in a week, we would have owed him $2 million guaranteed for this year. So that's a part of what goes into it. I don't think that's the case for Ingram. So maybe you can bring some top half competition. And it doesn't have to be Darren Waller, but like somebody like that. But that's the kind of things that I'm looking at. Like, obviously Cam Jordan, I think makes a lot of sense. As a perfect stopgap kind of bridge player at the defensive end position in case Savion Jones and those guys aren't ready. David Njoku's still available. It could happen, but again, I don't foresee it. Logan Hall's another guy that makes sense. So, yeah, I don't know. This name makes the most, like, I'm like, oh, I can see that. Like Calvin Austin III, the wide receiver from the Pittsburgh, right? A lower end, we were looking for the lower end. Maybe he could play special teams. He has some explosion, but that's really what you're looking at now, because the moves that you made, I think, take you out of the sweepstakes, not just financially, but just from it making sense. Like, it's not an attractive place for a lot of these guys to come now because you don't really have obvious holes. I mean, at least not on paper. You do, but it doesn't appear as such. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Also, what was your reaction to that? I'm not gonna name drop the certain beat reporter who said this, but what was your reaction to the guy who said, "Oh, the Broncos are interested in Kendrick Bourne"? Or what was the your reaction to when he said, despite trying to sign Travis Etienne, they're really in and really interested in re-signing Jaleel McLaughlin?
Oh,
That
dude.
made me fucking like, I don't know, man. I don't understand how these guys get jobs like that.
I had to make that public service announcement video on my Twitter, man, because it was like, it's like, dude, there's a read the room moment, right? Like, even if I worked for the team and my job was to PR glaze and try to, like, put out fires and stuff, I would never be able to get myself to be like, oh, okay, the Broncos just missed out on a prize free agent possession that everybody wanted. Let me bring up Jaleel McLaughlin. Like, how about we just hold off on that for a couple days, because it makes nobody feel better. Not one person in Broncos country was like, oh my God, thank God. Okay, we missed out on ETN, but we might be able to get Jaleel back. So that's great. Like, nobody was thinking that. And that pisses me off even more that they had the balls to even say it. Is so magnificent to me. It's like, dude, you don't have to say anything, or you can just be like, Travis Etienne was a little bit too expensive for what the Broncos wanted to spend, and just keep it at that. That in and of itself is annoying enough. But to say, oh, Broncos are interested in Julian McLaughlin, you're like, really, dude? Now this is when you bring it up? Like, that's crazy. That's crazy. It's like that person at a party where, like, let's say you're at a wedding and the cake falls and it gets all over the bride's dress, and you're just like, well, at least it wasn't wine or ketchup or something. You're like, dude, just shut your mouth right now. Like, read the room, bro. Like, don't bring up
Exactly.
Jaleel. You're asking for people to get into your comments and absolutely roast you. And then don't come at us and be like, Broncos country's really rude or they're really freaking out. Dude, you're saying stupid shit. Like, just don't say anything about Jaleel. That's not going to happen for a while anyways, probably, whether it's with Denver or somebody else. Like, nobody's thinking about Jaleel McLaughlin right now. It's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, no. And like, what was your reaction when they said they were in on Kendrick Bourne? Because that was something I did not want to hear. I don't think anybody else wanted to hear that. I
Yeah.
was like, are you
So
shitting me?
honestly, that one, I wasn't really surprised. I was surprised that it was mentioned like this early, and he actually got a deal. I wasn't surprised because I felt like the whole time, unless we traded for a receiver, the type of receiver that we were going to get is probably a lower end guy. Like you think, we got Trent Sherfield last year. The year before, I forgot the name of the guy who ended up getting shot when he was here, and then he went to
Reynolds, yeah.
Yeah, Josh Reynolds. So those guys make sense. Like I was fine with the Trent Sherfield signing last year. I was like, cool, if he's a really good special teamer. Didn't work out fine, no problem. Josh Reynolds too. So I felt like that was the move we were going to go. And I was good with that because I've always said, realistically, to make our wide receiver room better, you need these guys to develop. That's just how we've built it. And by having Sutton as the wide receiver one under a big contract, you're basically giving yourself only one opportunity. So I was totally fine with Kendrick Bourne. I actually like Kendrick Bourne too. I think he's a pretty good receiver. So I would have been fine with it. But had that come after the news of like Broncos were really in on Alec Pierce, which, disclaimer, I was really high on him and it would have been exciting, but I wasn't like, oh my God, we need Alec Pierce. But it wasn't like there was reports that came out that said Broncos were really in on Alec Pierce, but they just missed out on him. And then the Kendrick Bourne thing dropped. That would have been a little bit more annoying. But right after we missed out on ETN, like within minutes, they're like, Broncos have expressed interest in bringing back Julian McLaughlin. And you're just like, oh my God, dude. Like I would have almost rather you said that before the ETN news. But yeah, piss and glitter is just like what up Snapper said. Like, yeah.
Piss and glitter. That's one way to put it. No. How do y'all feel about getting Josh Jacobs? Dude, if it's for a vet minimum, I'd be all for it. Or no, not even a vet minimum, but lower end deal, I'd be all for it, man. Can you imagine Jacobs, Dobbins, Harvey, and maybe a rookie or a UDFA or whatever? I'd be excited about that.
Yeah, Emmanuel Wilson too, man, from the Packers is a really good player, and he's somebody that I think could help elevate the room. Like I do like the idea of getting another running back. Emmanuel Wilson, or some people were saying trading for Devon Achan's backup, Jalen Wright, like those kinds of guys, intriguing, right? A lot of, potentially a high ceiling. There's still a lot of potential. They're young guys and they're break glass in case of emergency when J.K. Dobbins gets injured. And then you don't go into the draft feeling like you have to draft a running back. You can go in there and saying, if the board falls to us and running back that we like is there, cool. But if we need to address, if there's a positional player that we like elsewhere, it's not going to prevent us from getting that person instead. So like moves like that make sense. Like there's, again, Emmanuel Wilson, I think is a really underrated, not talked about good back. And there's a couple guys that are still out there. But I'd say my number one right now is probably Cameron Jordan.
Yeah.
But that doesn't really help Bo Nix this year in terms of weapons, which is what I was hoping for.
It doesn't. Like, I'd be fine with over extrapolating into our relatively shitty guys if it was on the trenches. I'm always going to be for the trenches, all right? I'm always going to be for trench investment, And I know you are too, because ultimately the trenches, they are how you build football teams. They are how you win games. They are just how you build a successful football team in the grand scheme of things. But yeah, no, but you're reinvesting at low value positions. That's the main problem for me. You're reinvesting at low value positions. Like, I know we haven't had a good tight end. And you know what? I said this a lot during the free agency talk. I said, listen, it gets kind of lost in the sauce that linebacker and tight end are still not that valuable of positions. Like, they're just still not. Like, teams don't really.
Hold on, I got a screenshot this. Hold on. This is unbelievable.
Should I?
You can kick him out now.
Okay.
That shit is funny though, dude.
I don't think I can, but I'm going to stop showing the comments on the stage.
I'm going to send this to my wife laughing, and she's going to be like, are you sure you should be doing YouTube videos? I'm like, yeah.
Wow, we got 130 of y'all in here. Love y'all at 10:44 p.m. on a Monday, March 9th, 2026, after the Denver Broncos' first day of free agency. But there's one question I wanted to ask you. How does the Broncos draft strategy change now? Okay, or do you think it doesn't change much? All right. Do you think it doesn't change really all that much, or do you think?
I don't.
Yeah.
I mean, whether I think that they should or not is something that I can think about, and maybe it's a conversation for another time. But I don't. I've always felt like the Broncos' strategy going into a draft, except for the Bo Nix one, when you really had to get a quarterback, and obviously that was a huge hit, is take the best player available on your board. Whether you agree with it or not, I love that strategy. Like I'm always good with the BPA. And we usually don't go into the draft with, clear holes, which I think this year we will, but they won't think that. But yeah, I don't think it does. I think it's going to be one of those where they will ultimately take the player that they feel is the best for the team. But I would, man, I would love for us to invest in trenches still. I think drafting an offensive tackle / guard early is a really smart thing to do and keep that pipeline, because as phenomenal as our O-line's been, that pipeline's getting a little thin behind our aging tackles. So
Yeah, you're correct. And now, do you think, with only two inside linebackers that are like proven NFL guys that can handle an NFL workload, or not even that, but two true proven NFL linebackers, like, do you think that the strategy now has to be that you got to reach on one, or not even reach on one, but do you think it has to be addressed within our first three picks?
I mean, it'd be nice to, but I also look at it like uh, I'd say yes, it does need to. This is crazy. These people keep coming in the comments as wild.
I don't know how this keeps happening.
I know it's like a bot, I think, but I think another thing for me, it boils down to I think that they should, like, that's my personal opinion, is absolutely you should take a linebacker, and it probably should have been the case regardless. But I also wouldn't expect for that linebacker to contribute a whole lot in the rookie season. But it would be really nice to know at least there's a plan moving forward, or potentially a plan, and we'll see how it goes. Like, I like the idea that Savion Jones was a plan for JFM. Now, after 1 year, I don't think he can be the plan, but at least there's something. And then you still have Malcolm Roach, which is a really key piece, and Ioma Wazirike made a lot. But yeah, I would like to see us have a genuine commitment to that position, but I don't have much confidence that they will at this point.
Yeah, no, Drew Sanders too. He's one of the only linebackers that we've actually invested into, and he was like a inside linebacker edge hybrid, and I absolutely can't stand that archetype. I
Mhm.
just feel like it doesn't work in the modern
No, it
NFL.
doesn't.
No,
It doesn't, and it didn't help him that he was like, put in that position where he wasn't just like brought in and given this role. And then obviously the injury sucked, but it almost seems like, bro, if they get screwed with a certain positional group, they stop investing in it. Like, think about it. Like, they invested, a premium pick on Dulcich. He just kept getting hurt.
yeah,
They let him go, and then they were like, we're just going to ignore tight end and go minimum with guys that we know are reliable and blah, blah, blah. And then the same thing happened with Drew Sanders. Like, they invested a third round pick. They traded up for him. He ends up just always getting hurt, doesn't contribute anything. And so they're just like, screw that, bro. Let's just keep going with what we're comfortable with at linebacker. Like, it's crazy when you think that's exactly what they've done. Anything that they've not hit on the draft positionally, they've just ignored it. They've been like, nah, we're good.
yeah, that's actually a really good point. And the thing is, with your misses, they get magnified when your position room sucks. Like Baron Browning, I always bring this up. Third round pick. Does anybody care because you have Benito and Cooper? No, nobody gives a flying fuck. All right.
Yeah, especially
But
because Cooper was a 7th rounder in that same draft, and you absolutely nailed it with him.
yeah,
But
exactly.
yeah,
And then, you think about the tight end room where you've been bad for a long time. You think about inside linebacker where you've been bad for literally a decade. And now those misses get magnified. And that's why we're always talking about running back, inside linebacker, and tight end being all these needs for the Denver Broncos. And it's just infuriating. It's
yeah,
infuriating that, during the AFC Championship, one of my first thoughts walking to the parking lot after the game was, man, I can't believe that happened. But, it'd be really, really a missed opportunity to bring back all these same guys that I just had to watch on the field.
hmm
It'd be a huge missed opportunity to run it back with all these horrible guys like Troutman. I saw him lined up out wide like a lot during the
hmm
AFC Championship during the game against the Buffalo Bills. And
yeah.
I was like, you know what? I can't wait for us to actually upgrade at those spots. And not only did we not upgrade at those spots, we actively gave a raise to complete non-factors.
No, I know. This is crazy, man. I think we're actually really onto something, because it continues. So think about the three positions that have been neglected the most, right? It's been running back, tight end, and inside linebacker. And where were our draft misses? We missed on Drew Sanders, right? We missed on Greg Dulcich, and then Javonte Williams kind of, he was a bad injury. He's obviously turned it around, but we didn't get nearly what a second round pick should have gotten as a running back. So it's like we almost just punted. Now I know we drafted RJ Harvey in the second round last year, but it's kind of crazy to think that, like, man, they get burned and then they end up just forgetting about it and continuing to build elsewhere. It's kind of
Yeah,
wild.
you're right. You're right. Like, what happens if your first round pick? We haven't had the problem in the Payton Payton regime of our first round picks not working out, primarily because we haven't had first round picks. But even
Mhm,
then, like, what happens if Barron misses? What happens if all these guys just straight up miss? All right.
mhm.
What happens if, in a couple of years, I don't know, let's just say Jaquan's not as effective or Riley Moss isn't as effective and Johnny Barron's not effective either. That miss is going to be magnified and you're just gonna be like, what in the world are you doing?
Yeah.
I don't know, man.
And dude, to their credit, I mean, you look at George Payton's track record in the draft, he's been phenomenal. I
Yeah.
mean, he really has been fantastic. Nobody's going to be perfect, but like he's nailed a lot of these picks, and I mean, you got to give him credit for that. And even some of these undrafted guys, but we have a lot of of really, really good players that were drafted. But yeah, I just wish that we had shown a little bit more. Um, I just wish we had shown a little bit more. And here it is, Chuck Hartman music. Teams are built through the draft, not through free agency. Dude, I get it. I'll say this again. It's like exhausting. I'm not saying that the Broncos needed to go out and spend more than anybody and sign 10 guys. We were asking for 2 or 3 dudes that would replace guys that we felt like we've watched on this team for several years now. And we know we're pretty damn confident in not just watching them on the TV, but they're all 22 a million times that they're not very good. And we were hoping to get replacements for them, not the big level, the high level, $100 million replacements. Just those 3 guys. I agree with you. It is built through the draft. But when you don't address those, now your draft strategy is going to ultimately change because your draft strategy now is like, oh, we can just go at a completely, different direction than we would have had we actually felt like we upgraded. So I agree that it's built through the draft, but you can still upgrade your positions through free agency with much more known commodities that you've seen play in the NFL. It's a lot easier to do that.
Yeah, of course. And like I said, I wasn't one of these guys that came on here. It was just like, if we don't get Devin Lloyd, our season's done. If we don't get Alec Pierce, our season's done. I was one of those guys that was like, all right, I want to upgrade our role guys. I want to upgrade the guys that, like the Adam Trautmans of the world. I wanted to get like a Charlie Kohler because at least, with a blocking tight end Kohler, you can be certain that he's going to be a good blocker, right? I wasn't asking for them to go out and make a million splashes and trade all their first round picks and, go all in and, trade for all these great guys. Like I wasn't asking them to give up, 3 firsts, 3 seconds for Trey McBride or anything like that. I was just asking them to not run it back with the same scrubbalicious dudes that we watched over the past 3 years.
Yeah.
That's just all I was asking for.
No, for sure, man. And dude, think about it. Like, had we gone out there and just recklessly spent, I think it would have been exciting. All of us would have been talking about how exciting it is, right? But we would have been like, dude, this better work. Like, you better win the Super Bowl or else you're screwed. But I would much rather be talking like that and being like, all chips in the table, man. Let's go ahead and get this than being like, no, let's just sit there with our, tail tucked between our legs and hope that we get lucky as hell and are able to get back to the position that we got to last year. Again, I would much rather the former than the latter, to be honest with you on that.
Yeah, of course. Some draft talk going on here right now. They don't address linebacker, running back, tight end last year. I wouldn't say they didn't address it, but I think the way they addressed it was pretty laughable at the end of the draft because you came out of the draft with Harvey as your only running back of note in free agency and the draft. You did sign Greenlaw. You did sign Ingram. So I respect the fact that they at least tried with those.
Yes, big
Okay.
time,
Of
big
course,
time.
Ingram, Greenlaw will debate forever. Like, I think he's going to be heavily debated forever in Broncos country. It didn't work out here. That's just the reality. Like a 1-year signing and getting cut after the first year, or 3-year signing and getting cut after the first year, it's a miss. Whatever. We can always debate the reasons, but at least I respect the fact that they tried. I respect
Mhm,
the fact that they were just like Cody Barton. You were not good enough for us last year.
mhm,
We have standards. We want to build a championship team. We
mhm.
have, all this. So I don't respect the fact that they're running it back with Alex Singleton. I just don't. I flat out, especially because I'm like, what changed 365 days ago?
Yeah. No, dude. And remember last year at the owners meeting? Or I don't know. It might have been the owners meeting or whatever. But it was in the offseason, like around this time. Sean Payton sat down with Kay Adams, and he'll spill the beans with Kay Adams.
Oh yeah.
And she kept asking about this Joker role, and he would like kind of brush it off, but he'd say, "I think that our needs for this team is up the spine of the defense." Right? He said that's where I feel like we have our musts in the draft. And at that particular time, our linebacker group was Cody Barn, who we let go, Alex Singleton, and Justin Strnad. Those were our linebackers. And he was obviously talking about safety as well. So we addressed safety with Hufanga, nailed it, hit it out of the park, phenomenal signing. And then you address linebacker with Greenlaw. Cool. You fast forward a year later, Greenlaw's out of the picture, and the same two guys that you were saying you clearly needed to upgrade last year, now you're committed to both of them. What really changed? Like, did those two guys show you anything of substance that was like, oh, we don't have a need there anymore based off of this last year? I don't think you can confidently be like, yeah, I think Strnad and Singleton were so great that, we don't have a need anymore. Like, that's where I'm like, who are we kidding right now? That's why it doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, no, Strnad had a hell of a year. I will say that.
Yeah.
Strnad played fantastic this year, especially what I was expecting from him. And at the end of the 2024 season, I was like, this guy is one of our biggest defensive weaknesses. But yeah, no, Singleton, like the fact that you saw what you did on the field, like at some point, on-field play needs to be considered here.
Mm-hmm.
At some point, on-field play, I don't care how good of a guy he is in the locker room. And this is where I guess I just differentiate from a lot of Broncos, analysts that are paid to talk about the team and are paid by his agent to spew certain things and certain narratives, is because I'm going to come on here and I'm going to keep it real with you. I can appreciate what Alex Singleton did for us last year. I can appreciate that it was an inspiring season. Is he good enough to fit the standards of a defense in a Super Bowl window? No, he's not. He just flat out isn't.
Mm-hmm.
And he's going to be, you reinvested into a 32, going to be 33-year-old that's already had an ACL tear, who's terrible in coverage. So it's like, we are hamstringing ourselves. We're actively hamstringing ourselves.
Yeah. And dude, like, maybe they're just like, you know what? We didn't want to invest that heavily into the linebacker position in free agency because this is an extremely deep linebacker class at draft. And we just really want to be able to dabble in that. And if that's the case, actually is the case, like, cool, prove it to me in the draft then. And I guess we'll see and whatever, but you can't just make that assumption, and if they come out and just flat out say that, then, which they won't, then great. But it's like, yeah, dude, it doesn't make sense that last year you were pointing to this particular positional group as being a must add. You need to get like a must improve. And now here we are. We tried something, it didn't work out. We just come back to the same thing that we started with before, and we're good. And we did that by choice. It's not like these guys were just still under contract. We signed them and gave them a raise. So we doubled down on it.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. One more thing I will ask you, and then I will let you get out of here. So, is there any way that they can resalvage, or is there any way that they can salvage tomorrow? Is there any way that they can just be like, all right, how would you feel better if we signed PJ Locke? Would you feel better if we signed, like, I don't know, Romeo Doubs or Caden Ellis or Cam Jordan?
I don't think that there's anything that they can do to salvage it, to be honest, but there's definitely, and they're going to make moves. There's definitely moves that they can make where I would be like, okay, now we're cooking a little bit. Now we got something to talk about. And Big E Bronco, the quick number, he was 77th out of 80 inside linebackers in that range. But who would it be? Again, like, I don't think that this will happen tomorrow, but I think signing Cam Jordan would be a really solid move. Something you'd be like, okay, I can see the vision there. It's something that makes a lot of sense. He could be a really good mentor and stopgap for this team. I'd be intrigued by Juwan Jennings because I would look at him as a very much a do-it-all receiver, someone that wherever you need him to play, he can play it. He's a premier blocking wide receiver that can be very productive. So it's not like you're bringing in Sherfield, who's a really good special teamer and could be a blocker. And he didn't end up being that, but at the time, that's what they were thinking. This guy's actually a good receiver, tough as nails. Don't necessarily see it happening. And then, another one is maybe some of those tight ends that we mentioned, right? If Dallas Goedert's still out there, he's available. David Njoku, Darren Waller. Bring me somebody that's got a little bit of excitement to his game and can give you a little bit of production out of that room. Those would be a few moves. It doesn't have to be all three. So don't come at me being like, oh, yeah, do you want us to sign 10 other guys? Those are just a couple examples of, maybe one or two signings where I could be like, all right, now we got something to work with and we can kind of reevaluate at that point. But curious your thoughts there. Do you have anybody in mind?
I mean, Cam Jordan is one of them. I would just really like to see him. Like, no, there's no way you can salvage this because I think this free agency cycle, had you not brought back Alex Singleton, I would have just been like, great addition by subtraction. But you brought him back, and that's just the reality of it. And now, after they re-signed Alex Singleton, I was like, all right, cool. There's really nothing they can do to like make me think that they actually had a good free agency cycle. But yeah, man. Last thing I will ask of you is just what do you have to say about this? He's a box linebacker, should be easy to scheme him, not covering man. He is the brain of the D. Think about, he's the communicator. He's the main communicator that aligns everybody. But think about how many poor positions he put us in, putting himself one-on-one with Saquon Barkley, putting himself one-on-one with Jonathan Taylor, with Tyler Warren. Like, yeah, I don't know. We've talked about Alex Singleton's, the idea and philosophy of not bringing him back, but I feel like we need to revisit his play.
Yeah.
Real quick.
Well, and dude, how many times, like when the defense was leaky or where they would give up some of those explosive plays, especially later on in the season last year, how many times would everyone in the defense say it was just communication issues, or Vance Joseph would say, it's communication stuff. We just got to clean it up and be able to communicate better on the back end. Are we just going to forget about that? But that wasn't communication from Singleton, even though he's the green dog guy. That came from the secondary. Like, we don't know that, but I mean, it could be. So yeah, I mean, listen, he could be the brain of the defense or the heart of the defense that you want to talk about, but it's not a really good functioning brain, and it's kind of a failing heart. Like, that's just kind of is what it is at this point. Like, I'm sorry to break it to you. And I love Alex Singleton as a person. I love the way he plays his ass off with his hair on fire. Like, it really is cool, but you cannot let that cloud your judgment of, dude, this isn't a participation trophy. Like, we're trying to win a fucking Super Bowl. These are billion-dollar organizations. Trillions of dollars are spent on sports, and we're worried about feelings. And he's the heartbeat of a locker room. Dude, give me a break. Like, I don't care about heartbeat of a locker room. By all accounts, Aqib Talib is probably a terrible person, or at least was when he was playing. I mean, he would do crazy shit. He'd fight people. He'd get fines all the time. He's always talking shit. But do you know what he did? He played his ass off and he made plays, and we won a Super Bowl because of it. And so you need that. You need a little bit of that too. It can't everything just be all goody two shoes all the time.
Yeah, of course. Man, we got 150 of y'all in here. Shout out to you. Yeah, most of it have come from Marcky's Twitter, but we do have quite a few still watching on YouTube as well. Real quick, Mark, thank you so much for joining me. And thank you.
Bro, thanks for having me, man.
Man, you were going for 3 hours. You were going for 3 hours based on horsepower hour and this. So hats off to you, man. So,
dude, it's easy, man. Like, it goes by so fast.
Of course.
I literally could, like, if I didn't want to go upstairs and chill with the wife before we went to bed, like, if she was out of town, I can promise you I'd have gone till 3 a.m.
Oh yeah, me too.
It is easy for me, but appreciate you guys, man. Make sure you obviously sub to Kodiak's channel, and I would try to be positive and leave you on a positive note, like I like to. But guys, pray to whatever God you worship. If you don't worship for God, hope for the best, because I don't know what the hell is going to happen. But it was a terrible day one of free agency. That's all I got to say.
All right, yep. But everybody in the chat, you guys were on fire tonight between here and horsepower hour. So, that was awesome for y'all tonight. And yeah, I just want to say bye to y'all real quick. D-Rock, Darian, Biggie, and just a few other guys. So Todd Feinberg, or whatever your name is, David, BK, Chuck, y'all were fantastic. But either way, I loved watching it with you guys tonight, and I will see you guys next time. Peace.